Good morning, it's Mr. Grant, and I am here with a short video on our latest assignment, which is to compare and contrast the North and the South's involvement with slavery. Now, a reminder, this is a test grade, so this is an assessment of everything we've learned about slavery. Well, not everything, but I'm looking for you to demonstrate that you understand many of the things we learned about slavery. So here's the first thing, is to define the question. And what I've done for you is I've created an organizer that has two questions on here. Questions are stated: how were the northern colonies involved with slavery? How were the southern colonies involved with slavery? Um, there's a difference between the North and the South's involvement in slavery, and through all of our assignments that are in Google Classroom in Slavery in America, we've learned about slavery and how it's connected to either the North or the South. So that's your question for you. That's your definition of the question. The second thing you should be encouraged to do is to sort some of the resources in Slavery in America. And what I've done for you is included a Venn diagram. If you're in class, we've got the paper one we're using. And here's some examples from students for involvement with slavery for the North and the South. So one of the first assignments we used was creating a timeline. And so students felt that that gave us information about how the North and the South were connected with slavery. And the timeline identified laws that were passed to take rights away from people. So they put it in the shared category. Now, if we looked at that timeline and we wanted to use one of the laws as evidence, we could use the 1641 Massachusetts law recognizing, legalizing race-based slavery. And then that would fall in this category. If we used one of the laws that Virginia made, we would put it in this category. Another resource we have is the graph here, graphing information on slaves being transported across the Atlantic Ocean. Following that up, we had Economics of Slavery 1 and 2, which identified the wealth derived from certain products and where the slaves went. And one of the maps that you created identified slaves going to all of the regions. That's why this appears over here. But the statistics that we placed on the map eventually showed 99% of the slaves going to the southern region. So because of that, we would put that in this category. Most recently, we learned about northern profits from slavery, and students put some information on the board. They put rum. Well, what's the connection to rum? Why is that over here? Well, in order to make rum, you need molasses. Molasses is a product from sugar. Sugar is produced in the South. So the North has to purchase their sugar from slave plantations. And then they're trading this rum around the world. And part of that rum trade is part of the triangle of trade, which the Northerners are involved with when they transport their products and the slaves across the Atlantic. So there's many examples here from the lessons, and that is what we're doing in step 2, sorting resources. Okay, this resource demonstrates the northern involvement, this resource demonstrates the southern involvement, and it's really just a quick look at all the lessons that we've already done. Now, the next thing I've put in there for you is this organizer. You'll see that attached in Google Classroom. And this is onto the step 4 for It Says. And the first box here is titled It Says. So when we use that phrase, I am referring to a source, one of the resources we used in class. So it says. This is a direct quote. So if we read an essay in class, which we did, we read an essay on cotton. We read an essay on sugar and slavery, rice and slavery, northern profits from slavery. All of those documents provide direct evidence, and we want to use that. I want you to copy it and to quote it, because the next box where it says I say is for you to paraphrase it and put it in your own words. Explain what that means. But you have to have factual information here. Statistics, facts. Describe a chart or a graph or a map or a quote from the text. That is required here. And you need three of those pieces to show how the North was involved in slavery. Each one explained. And then the final box says, and so. This is, how does this answer the question? I like to take that a step further and say, and so what? So what are you telling me? You need to explain how that information you've provided, the quote or the fact, and your paraphrase, how does that answer the question? How does that show that the North was connected with slavery? And then you're going to do the same thing for the South. So there's plenty of resources, and we want you to complete it on this organizer. If you're in class, I'm giving you paper ones, but the same organizer is digitized, so you can type it up as well. Okay, I'm going to give you a quick example of how to use the resources. Think back to our lesson on rice and slavery. I had you answer 11 questions, and then there was a chart and a graph, which I didn't include that data. I believe it's in one of the attachments. But I did this in class. I went over this with you. And what I identified was one of the questions asked you, well, how much rice was produced in 1700? And it was 330 tons. So that's a very small bar. And then it asked you how much rice was produced in 1726. And we had 5,000 tons. So it was quite a bit more. The second question asked, well, how many slaves were there in 1700? We had 3,000. So we have a small amount of rice produced, and we have 3,000 slaves. As that rice increases to 5,000 tons, right, more than 10 times what was here, we have an increase in slaves in 1724 to 32,000. So what we can derive from this is, as rice production increases, the number of slaves increase. Or you could look at it in the reverse way, as the number of slaves increase, the amount of rice increases. The two are tied together. And so that is like the main point from that lesson, at least one of the main points. And this is what you'll need to pull out of all of those activities that we've done. So you're basically going to repeat some of your learning and show me 3 examples of how the North was involved with slavery and how the South was involved with slavery. And the two are slightly different.